So our last section about factoring is 8.8, which is factoring by grouping. So for these type of problems, I'm going to give you just a few intro ones. So I will have one like these on your quiz. However, most of the ones that you're going to be doing in class are actually going to be a little bit more complicated than this. So I know this one looks complicated, but once you know what to do, it's not too bad. So for these, we are going to factor by grouping. That means that we put things in parentheses and then factor out a GCF that we have in parentheses. So in this case, we have a GCF of both of these things. We have an x plus 8 in that one. We have an x plus 8 in that one. So that's actually our GCF, and we can factor it out. So x plus 8 is the GCF. And it's similar to what we did a few sections ago when we were actually factoring out a GCF. The only difference is that this is a big clump of stuff in parentheses. So what's going to happen is we're going to bring that x plus 8 out front. The stuff that we have left over, the 5 plus 3x, is also going to be in parentheses. So it's going to look like that. So one more I want you to try on your own that's similar to this, and then we'll go to one that's a little bit harder, and then we'll go to a few that are also harder. So go ahead and try this one. So for this one, your GCF is x minus 5. So you're going to pull that out front. You're left with 2x plus 3, and this is my answer. So here's another one that we're going to factor by grouping. It's one step harder than the previous two because you have things in the parentheses that are really, really similar but not quite the same. Just note that x minus 2 and 2 minus x are not the same thing. However, if you were to factor out a negative one, they would become the same. So to get this to become negative x minus 2, you can factor out a negative 1. And you'll see why I'm going to do that in just a minute. So first term, we're still going to keep the way it is. However, now we're going to rewrite this next part as minus 5. What's going to happen is this is going to become a negative 2. It's going to become a positive x. From there, you only need to just switch around the order of it, which you're allowed to do because as long as you keep the x positive and the 2 negative. And you'll find that this one looks like numbers 1 and 2 now. So from here, you can just factor out your x minus 2, and then you're left with x minus 5. So now we're getting into the harder type of problem. So when you have 4 terms, the first thing you're going to look at is see if you can simplify anything by combining like terms. There are no like terms here, so we can't do that. So then the next thing we're going to do is we are going to attempt to get this into the form that we had in the previous problems. And I can do that by grouping together different sets of terms. So from each of these, I am going to factor out my GCF. So my GCF for my first set, which is y cubed minus 4y squared, is going to be y squared. When I do that, I am left with y minus 4. So now my second grouping, I'm going to look at those two terms, the 8y minus 32, find what my GCF is from there. It's 8. I'm also left with y minus 4. If you get to this point and you have two things in parentheses that are the same, that's great. That's what you're aiming for. In general, the only thing that might be different is that I might have just the opposite sign where you would have to take out a -1. If we're grouping though, every other problem I give you will be able to get in this form. So then from here, you do exactly what we did in numbers 1 and 2. We factor out the y minus 4. We're left with y squared plus 8. And that's my answer. By the way, you'll find if you go back and you FOIL this to check it, you will get what you started with. I'm going to just quickly show that. You do not need to do this every time, but when you have a test or quiz, I highly recommend that. So you would get y times y squared, you get y cubed. Y times 8 is positive 8y. -4 times y squared is -4y squared. -4 times 8 is -32. So even though it's a different order, this is the exact same thing that we started with, which is good. That's what we want. So go ahead and pause. Please try this problem on your own. So for this one, you should start by grouping together our first set of terms, group together your second set of terms. Your first set has a GCF of 5w squared. That leaves you with w plus 2. We're going to keep that plus in the middle. Our second set has a GCF of 3, which leaves you also with w plus 2. So we're off to a good start on this. That's what we want. The last thing we need to do is factor out a w plus 2. The stuff that you have left over is 5w squared plus 3. And once again, if you FOIL it to check it out, you will find that it works out. So our last type of problem is going to have one extra step. So I'm going to start by grouping together my a cubed minus 5a squared, and I'm going to group together my -6a plus 30. So with my first set of terms, I am going to factor out the GCF, which is a squared. That leaves me with a minus 5. So now for the second set, you will notice that you have to do a little bit extra to get it to become a minus 5. The little extra thing that you need to do is, in addition to taking out the GCF, which is 6, you also should take out that negative. So I'm actually going to factor out a -6. When I do that, I'm left with a. 30 divided by -6 gives me -5, so that's what I get there. Then from there, I actually can just follow the steps we did at the very beginning, and this is my answer.